we've been doing these marketing panels for the past several years, and you know, the whole point of this is for these guys to share best practices, because the reality is that the B2B marketing community is small, and I would imagine 90% of the people in this room are all facing similar challenges. You know, you're being tasked with generating more pipeline, and not just any pipeline, but net new pipeline. And in order to do that, you got to work closer with sales and manage your campaigns more efficiently. So I want to thank these guys for coming up and sharing their insight. And before we get started, I thought if you could just do a quick round of introductions and let everyone know, you know, your role, and then we can get into the questions. So Lee, we'll start with you.
Hi, I'm Lee Quigg, and I head up marketing for Violin in EMEA. I've been doing B2B tech marketing for 12 years and been working with TechTarget since my days at Citrix.
My name's John Moser. I head up EMEA marketing for Aruba, part of the HPE organisation, and we specifically look at the networking division. I've been, we're kind of being integrated into the broader HPE organisation right now, and we were acquired about 12 months ago. I actually joined about 8 months ago from a previous networking vendor, and I've been in B2B for about 20 years now.
Hi, I'm Joanna Arnett. I represent the Barracuda Networks. Barracuda was founded in 2003 and is 100% channel company. We went IPO in 2013. The company mission is to provide security and storage solutions for companies of all sizes. I am field marketing manager for Central and Eastern Europe and Germany, and one of my main responsibilities is demand generation programs in my regions.
Hi, I'm Kwok Dang. I work for Hortonworks. We're probably just under 5 years old. Probably the fastest company to reach 100 million ever. We just beat Salesforce. And I run all digital marketing internationally, focusing on demand generation, working with the sales development team to qualify and progress the leads on to the opportunities.
Great. Let's dive right in. So something we're all faced with. So with ROI front and center, what tactics have you implemented to improve results? And then if you could share your typical process for lead follow-up. And Lee, we'll start with you.
Really, for me, over the last 10 years, working for a variety of sizes of company, Violin Memory, incredibly small. We're globally 250 people. I've worked for the other end of the spectrum, EMC, 50,000 people globally. So really, for me, it depends upon the company I'm in and the resources that they've got. That said, whatever we do, marketing has to pay, and marketing has to demonstrate its value. So the ROI demonstration can be at the very basic. It can be how much pipeline we've generated and then how much eventually closes to closed and won. Or in terms of when you're looking at an enterprise sale, it's 6 to 12 months. So you can't, after 3 months of doing an activity, go, well, we've generated, you know, this much pipeline. So the actual measurement and tracking has to be far deeper than a simple dollar pipeline. It can, going back to what Bryony was saying actually, and she and I didn't talk before today, is actually all about engagement. We'll look at the engagement on our web. We can go to the accounts, the key global accounts that we track, and we'll monitor their engagement over a set period of time to see how and where they're engaging with us on social, on our site, on our advertising, through events. So we can see if we've got a multi-million-dollar deal going through, we can track and we will monitor the level of their engagement with us, which will then indicate the propensity of that deal to close successfully.
Great.
So I'll talk about it from the context of a business unit within a much broader organisation, and I think the interesting aspect that we're going through is obviously we're being integrated, where there's a lot of kind of process and a lot of kind of history, track record of driving towards a pipeline metric and a revenue metric for marketing, and that's clearly, you know, a very key important part for the credibility of the organisation. I think as a business unit, though, there are a couple of different things you want to look at. The first challenge that you have is you want to look at the all-up ROI for the organization, where you're kind of going to be investing your dollars, how you actually want to go to market in certain circumstances. And sometimes looking purely at the pipeline revenue metric is very misleading for all reasons that Lee mentioned. So I think where we tend to focus in terms of our ROI metrics, and it's a little bit different within the business unit structure for Aruba, because we have ownership of the end-to-end process, from everything from the PR, the advertising, all the way through to elements of the channel, which is different for the other business units within HPE. And so as a consequence of that, what we're able to then do is to look at some of the micro ROI metrics in terms of the engagement rates online. Potentially, we're looking at consumption of certain content assets. We're able to look at engagement across the work that we do with TechTarget and other media partners as well. So we're able to kind of bring together the end-to-end marketing dashboard and get very granular in terms of what's converting where and when. And that's kind of where we consider the ROI to be at its most pivotal point.
Great. Thanks, John. Joanna?
For us, it's all about briefing the campaign, debriefing and training for all involved parties, whether it's internal staff, salespeople, whether it's an agency. It doesn't matter if it's a telemarketing campaign, a webinar, or a TechTarget campaign. We find that having that process mapped out really helps out in driving the ROI, especially as we nurture those leads internally before we pass them on to our partners to close. So that's key. It's basically the closed loop feedback that is paramount at Barracuda.
Great, thank you.
I think three main things that we focus on are alignment with sales, so kind of understanding how your relationship is going well with the sales team, but also for any campaign metrics, what are the metrics and are they communicated with the sales teams as well? So things that we look into are things like number of leads created, number of leads engaged, qualified, accepted, qualified into an opportunity, and then progress along the kind of sales stage. So we look at all of those and look at how quickly they progress down the sales cycle as well. But at the same time, we do an analysis around where the lead has come from. So you look at things like the lead source, the origination of that lead, as well as the touch points of how they become engaged. So did they become known because of a list acquisition, or did they visit the website, fill out the form, download a white paper? We need to understand where the origination of that lead is, as subsequently the other ingredients, such as sales engagement, webinar invitation, and so on, that contributes to the cake, which is the opportunity. Yeah. So I think some of the tactics that have worked for us is, simple things like having webinars in local time zone, running those on a regular basis. It just gives you more insight into your database, who is engaged, who is not, what type of organizations are engaging with your content. It gives you a lot more, and at the same time, synchronizing that with the sales team as well. So you're gathering a lot of data that would be precious for the sales team to know. So if you're using Eloqua, if you're using Marketo, make sure that they get visibility of what they're doing on the website, if they're engaging with your content, so they can have a better conversation. I mean, ultimately, my view is that sales will validate the success of marketing. So they are my clients. So I need to make sure that they're fed well and they have visibility and clear of the metrics that we have.
Very good. I mean, I think that it's a lot of good feedback. I mean, Lee said something that I think is a challenge a lot of people face, is that, you don't, for enterprise buys, you don't see pipeline for 6-9 months sometimes. But like your sales teams, I guarantee they all expect to see immediate pipeline from your online programs, whether you're working with TechTarget or anyone else. And it's just not likely. I mean, that we know from all of our research that research process can be 6-9 months. And if you're calling them on month 1 of that process, and sales has the expectation that that's going to turn into an immediate opportunity, well, that's going to build, it's going to break the trust between sales and marketing. So I think a lot of these points is like really working tightly with sales and having them be clear on what the program is and how you're tracking it is important. I mean, we touched on some of this, but if you guys could share examples of how you are tracking these lead programs. And we mentioned some of these things Kwok did about attribution models, and how do you make sure that if you generated a lead and it turns into a deal 9 months later, that Lee's getting credit for that, and some salesperson's not claiming that that was all generated from them.
Well, it's a valid point, and you kind of go back to the engagement and tracking. But as you say, I mean, what's the killer element that actually generated that sale? And I would love to sit here and say hand on heart that there was one element. And in fact, in all of my years of doing marketing and tech marketing, when Karen and I worked together, we used to at Citrix we ran a two-day forum up in Edinburgh. And that's the only time when I can pinpoint one element when a customer came out of a presentation. I think the competitor was somebody called V something. Can't quite think of who the competitor might have been. And they came out of a Citrix presentation and said, "I'm putting my deal on hold with them because of what I've just heard." Now, so that was the only time when I can confidently say, hand on heart, that was down to them attending our event. Otherwise, ultimately, marketing is all about multi-touch points. So what do you actually truly attribute? If you're running a very discrete targeted program, such as the QSO program, it's much easier to say, we can track it back down to, yes, that lead came from the QSO program. But really, I would say typically, marketing is about multi-touches, and anything and everything can influence. Ultimately, though, we'll always go back to, well, what was the first point of contact? And that generally then becomes the source tracking code.
Okay. Yeah, very similar. I mean, I think, in the networking space specifically, we, in a previous company, we saw, and we're tracking our web visitors, and typically you'd have about 18 different interactions from an individual before you'd actually get them into some sort of pipeline stage. And that was a combination of being part of a nurture program, downloading content from the web, going into sales and not necessarily being followed up, but coming back into a nurtured program and being caught up in the process again. So I think, to your point, it's all about that continuity and continuous nurturing approach to what you do. Similarly, I think there are only 3 occasions where I can think of a deal that came directly as a consequence of one thing. Actually, in Clicked Chat, when we first piloted that in, again, previous company, the first thing that came through was a $147,000 deal where the individual had actually listed the whole product SKUs out bit by bit by bit by bit by bit. Now, that happens once in a lifetime, right?
Otherwise, sales wanted a lot
more. Otherwise we'd all be doing
it.
And we'd all be very rich off the back of it, no doubt. But the reality is it is very complex, as we heard from the panel this morning. And I think, trying to force fit something into being linear because it's simple for us is the biggest mistake I think that I've seen marketers make over the last few years.
Great, thanks. Joanna?
Well, I don't think there's much more for me to add. I completely agree with my colleagues here. Some things are going to be easier to attribute the ROI to than others. So if I've got an appointment setting campaign that I know exactly how many, so it will be a handful, let's say 50 appointments, and then I work very closely with my sales team, and I can see exactly where they are in the customer journey. So it's easier to attribute rather than a mass marketing of content download campaign where there have been multiple touch points. So it's more difficult to say, okay, has this lead come from this particular campaign, or have we met this customer at a trade show or at a webinar?
Great.
I think, just going back to the point, it is multi-touch. It's all integrated. Each piece of content, each piece of campaign has its own goal. So where you want to attract an individual to come into your database, you create something that is more high level, more attraction related. I get the question from my management team all the time, which campaigns have worked best for ROI in terms of closed business? Well, you can't really, I'm sure you guys already know, can't really say one campaign that attributes to opportunities. I could say, well, the product page generates the most opportunities, so we should invest more in there. It kind of works all hand in hand. You have to drive audiences to the website through search, social, content, and all of that. engage them through the sales funnel, through webinars and so on. And those have specific goals to then nurture them to a sale. So I think from a metrics perspective, I think sales probably need to understand what that flow looks like, and what your core metrics are from leads created, engaged, qualified, or handed over to sales.
Great, thanks. Go ahead,
I have a question. Do you see some change now, a move away from doing physical events to more digital online engagement with prospects? I certainly see that in my role a lot less. People aren't attending events so much, they don't have the time. Is that something you feel there's a shift now?
Well, as someone who focuses more on digital, I do see I think you've got to be really tight in terms of knowing what the metrics are when you do run an event, and you've got to be really disciplined when capturing the names, loading them on Salesforce, ensuring that you've got all of the details, and then onboarding them onto digital campaigns. So they both can work hand in hand. You don't get the personal touch, right, when it comes to digital campaigns, whereas you do in an event, face-to-face program, you could say. So I don't think they're going away. I think there's a reason why people are here today, right?
Can I just add into that? Actually, I entirely agree. In my previous role, one of the things that I did was run the Pan-EMEA series of events at EMC. In 1 year, running 36 events. Had a multi-million-dollar investment, and the ROI was over 3 figures in terms of millions. Now, that's, you talk about tracking. It was fairly kind of rudimentary, but in terms of running a marketing activity, getting the attendance, getting people there, clearly, obviously, you have to make the content right, the audience acquisition, but it was absolutely fantastic. And I met with a colleague a couple of weeks ago last year. They scaled back tremendously, and I said, so how are the forums going this year? And he said, well, funnily enough, all the sales leaders complained when they weren't there last year. So, I think there absolutely is a place for events, but you have to look, going back to what you said, a lot of people focus on the sexy fun bit of putting an event together, but actually that really should only be 30% of it, because it's all about the follow-up. And if you can do the follow-up effectively, it will absolutely generate the return for you.
I think I'd agree with that. I think that the event, for doing the sake of pushing out your marketing message into the community, those types of events are dying on their feet. I think for events where you are building community, they are very different. So as an example, we hosted a community event, technical community event a couple of weeks ago in Portugal, and 1,200 people from 44 countries flew out to that. They have to pay to attend the event as well. It's not an insignificant price point. And we had 200 people on the wait list to come to that event. Now, it's because I think we're not trying to preach to them. We're offering up and trying to give them access to our product development team, so they can take part in that process and be engaged in that process. And as a consequence of that, you see a very different reaction. I think where we continue to push the more traditional message out, we are struggling and have largely stopped all of those.
Barracuda events are key. So in my marketing toolkit, it plays a very important role. I work very closely with channel partners, and one of the key things that brings revenue back fast is events. So we're running lunch and learns for small groups, like 10, 15 people, and it's because of those relationships that partners have with the customers that they come to those events, and they come because they are truly interested, and we see tremendous return on investment.
It goes back to the earlier point in the earlier panel discussion. What makes you buy? Relationships. Well, how do you start to foster those relationships if you're not meeting people face to face?
Yeah.
So I'd agree with a lot of the comments, but I actually think that an interesting way to approach this is even incorporate digital into your event. So you could do videos at an event, 1 minute videos, for example, with thought leaders. Have someone doing sort of on the street what's going on at the event, big events. I'm talking about conferences, but equally maybe do some, what's going on at the event, like a window into the event for people that can't afford to attend, for example. So I think there's other ways that you can use events in combination with digital and social media, clearly, to actually generate a lot stronger and better ROI out of the event. But it does require a lot of orchestration, to get to that point. And then the other thing I think about around events is also it's very time consuming. It's a lot of time out of the office. You have to, as a marketeer, I found it a lot better to go to the event with sales and ensure that the leads were properly tracked rather than leave it to their own devices. So there's a little bit of a, I guess, a catch-22. How much time in your calendar can you attribute to doing events versus doing online, which is less labour intensive? So
it all goes back to the measurement as to where you're going to generate what the objective is. Is it relationship building, or is it that you want to demonstrate an ROI? And sales guys will always obviously want the leads, but I think you also have to, as I said, put in the legwork beforehand to make sure that the follow-up is then done properly. Whether that's marketing-led and you spoon-feed sales to here's everything, you load the data into Marketo, Salesforce, wherever, and you have a very clearly defined nurture program. But I think in terms of follow-up, just make it as easy as possible for sales.
I think as well, the other thing to that is, the community conference I referred to, it's part of an online community. There's about, 50,000 people globally within that. It generally, we get registrations of 800 people a month globally signing up into this community. There are forums, there are blogs that exist. They talk about the technology. It's kind of helps our support function, to be honest, as well. And we can also see within there certain ideas that come up that then feed back into the product development cycles. So it's not just about having digital or the event itself. It's the event becomes the pinnacle meeting point to extend the relationship, to extend the things, but the conversations continue digitally.
Yeah.
But I also think there's a difference between different types of events.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Events, for example, one-to-one meetings where you have almost like a speed dating arrangement where there's predefined profiles and you get your salespeople in front of a customer where there's a predefined project, budget, time frame, everything you need to get success out of that.
I think it's going to vary by organization. You mentioned it, Gabriel, like events aren't going away. And if you asked any sales guy, they'd rather go to an event because they see it's tangible. They get to talk to someone. But if you had 10,000 pounds and that was your budget, do you want to do one event on one day, or can you run an online program for 3 months? And TechTarget, we do events. We do 20 events a year in Europe. We believe in them. There's a time and place. But I just think, given if you have big budgets and big staff to manage the event, go for it. But if you're limited staff, events are very difficult to manage and put on and promote, and it's one day in time. So you're limiting the number of people that you can actually engage with.
It's just one element of the mix.
It's just one element of the mix, yeah.
As you said, it's part of the toolbox.
In a perfect world, we all have millions of pounds that we can do everything. But each organization is going to be different on what they can.
Well, I agree, but I think the analogy you were making about the big user conference where you've got product groups and specialists there, and you're getting a sort of roadmap view, and it's all very targeted at customers, it's customer events. Clearly, there's a lot more arrangement behind that in terms of resources. So I think there's just a little bit of a understanding.
Of
what comparing apples with apples, if you will.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So we'll probably be asking this question for the next 3 years, and I think if I asked everyone now dead sober, I'd probably 75% would say, oh, we have a great relationship with sales. And if I asked you all at 4:30 after a couple drinks, you'd probably be telling me how much you hate sales. I'm a sales guy, I know. We're difficult. But this is the hardest part about our jobs. Like, you're generating digital leads. Sales guys are used to doing face-to-face events. They want band stage leads that want to talk to them today and have the PO ready. And it's just not realistic. So a lot of what you all are tasked with is how do you get sales to understand what you're buying, and how do you get them to follow up with these leads and these digital activities a bit differently. So do you have any tips for them?
Well, yeah, absolutely. It goes back to what Kwok was saying earlier, sort of sales are our customers, which is, I really hate to think of it like that, but it's absolutely true. Years ago it was, sales and marketing head to head. Well, actually now it's a partnership. If we don't work well together, they always are going to be head to head. Going back over the last 6 to 8 years, in my marketing roles, we've worked very collaboratively with sales. You know, when I was at Citrix, I used to attend the Monday morning enterprise sales meeting to be part of it. Here now at Violin, I attend the Monday morning, Monday afternoon regional sales director calls. I go to the QBRs, I represent marketing. I don't put a plan together and present it as a fait accompli to the French marketing director, to the Russian marketing director. I work with them to understand what their sales objectives are, where their key accounts are, where their key sweet spots are, and what their needs are. And then I work collaboratively with them to get them on board. I would never present and run something that doesn't have their buy-in, because I'm just setting myself up for failure. Because when it doesn't work, because they don't follow it up, it's because they didn't want it. And that's what marketing just gave it to me. So if you want to give yourselves the best chance of success, you do have to work collaboratively. Yes, it's never going to be perfect. Yes, give me, 3 gin and tonics on a Friday night, and I'm sure I'll be able to tell you of where, an instance where sales have really hacked me off, and likewise they would do the same. It's a healthy relationship. Your marriage isn't perfect. Sales and marketing isn't going to be. So that really, you do have to just work together.
Yeah. I think for me, one of the biggest learnings over the years has always been try and get involved in the sales strategy planning sessions as quickly as possible, and that's when you're coming up to the financial year. So as you're thinking about, what's the sales plan for next year, if you're not involved in that conversation from day one, sharing, the thoughts from a marketing perspective, being able to share what you've got in terms of budget, of resource, etc., with the organisation, and allow them to be a part of that planning process within marketing at a high level, not necessarily the content, but in terms of the areas of focus to align with the strategy. If you get that bit wrong, you're on the back foot for the rest of the year. And whether you're doing whatever tactics you're putting in place. So you've got to get that bit right, number one. And I know it's a cliche, but I think sometimes we don't work hard enough at that piece and force ourselves into that conversation as marketers.
It's exactly the same at Barracuda. So having a common process for sales and marketing is key, and as having strategy as well, common strategy. So we have QBRs on a regular basis, and we talk to each other, and we ask in sales, what is it that you want? And we work together, and we are one team.
I think I absolutely, completely agree with what everyone said. I think it's also kind of making your metrics visible to the sales team and vice versa as well. They will be selecting larger organizations to focus on, and some of the things that we can help them be more mindful of their selection is providing that data and helping them make a more of an informed decision. So if you're seeing kind of traction in some sort of industry and they don't have any of those accounts within that industry selected, you could guide them towards, hey, how about this, 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 and this. But I think some smaller things like going out for a beer with them, celebrating together, so understanding when deals closed. So I set up an alert on Marketo, which emails all of the marketing team when a deal is closed, with balloons and everything. It's quite fancy. So I think kind of you can go up to the salesperson, congratulate them, go out for a beer, buy them a drink, and so on. So I think that's and it's tough if your sales guys are remote as well. But simple email, simple kind of chat. Congrats on your, how do we repeat the success with some of the other organisations? How did they come to know about us in the first place? That type of feedback loop as well is really essential for your marketing.
It's good advice. I mean, I think sometimes the simple things, go a long way. And, talking to marketers and having this panel, I think the best advice I've received is that you sit down with your sales team and hear directly from them and let them know what you're purchasing and what the expectations are. But having that ongoing dialogue with them is going to be key. And when TechTarget runs programs, we meet with sales teams, and it's helpful. It's not the feedback's not always great, but when we get the feedback 4 weeks into a campaign versus 4 weeks after a campaign ended, at least we have a chance to adjust and make improvements on it, and that's going to benefit obviously us, but it benefits you and the investments you're making. So I think that's really good advice from the panelists. Moving on, as we talked about this a bit before, as marketing spend has shifted from more traditional tactics like events and appointment setting, you know, how are you using data analytics and nurturing as part of your marketing strategy today?
Well, for us, it's really much sort of moving into the consultative approach and social selling. Again, going back to what was said in the earlier panel session, you know, demonstrate your knowledge of my business. Don't try and sell me a product or solution. And by using the data that we've got available, you know, whether it's from yourselves through the programs we run with you or from our other marketing activity, it's really changing the way sales have to approach their prospects and customers so that they're not just trying to sell a product or a solution. It's actually build the relationship, become a trusted partner, understand their business and their challenges, and then when they have a need, you've done the groundwork so they'll come to you. Try and pick up the phone and sell to them straight away, and they'll fail. So really that's how we're using the intelligence and the data to transform our sales teams into how they now approach the enterprise consultative sale.
Great. John?
So for us, very much looking at where are going to be the growth vectors for the business unit and what are the areas where we need to kind of get the alignment. When you then look at the routes to market within each of those, you obviously want to change the tactics accordingly. And I think, you know, some of the dangers with that is that you're going to go in with these vanilla models and expect everyone to do the same across every segment of your business, and it just doesn't work. So for us, what we're trying to do, and what we're in the process of doing it, so in the last 8 months, we've launched 6 translated websites, 6 microsites, a 36-stream nurture process, which is based on 6 stages. We insert content into each of those, and it's all based on a high degree of analytics. We deliberately pull all of this information together in this kind of integrated dashboard that sits behind the scenes, and that's what we then use to determine what's working, if it's not working, why it's not working, and then we start to review all of those components individually. It's a big lift, there's no doubt about it, but until you kind of move into those areas where you can get that granularity and also that end-to-end connectivity behind the scenes, then it's very difficult, I think, to just go into the investment models with digital or any other tactic unless you really know what it is you're trying to achieve within the segment and how you're going to analyze it.
And sales, you know, once it's reached a certain level, the sales get notified through.
Yeah, so there's a lead scoring program that sits behind that as well. And then obviously one of the things we're doing is playing around with that lead scoring right now. Yeah. We see data sources behaving very differently, as you'd expect. We see size of organisation behaving differently, and actually we see market variation behaving differently as well. So, you know, again, be very careful when you're moving these digital models live to make the assumption that everybody operates as if you're coming from a UK view of the world, because they don't. And, you know, one of the big tests that we did actually in the previous company is that the design of certain components works in kind of Northern Europe, but it fundamentally doesn't work in Southern Europe. So you have to change the design components to get that thing. So we you know, getting that testing methodology and that fast failure, so important to do, and yet so few companies do it.
Yeah. Joanna?
So events and appointment setting still plays an important role in the B2B marketing mix. We use that a lot and have built a number of successful programs at Barracuda. But our partnership with TechTarget here helps us with the content marketing. It's really insightful stuff that we've been able to get from the campaigns with TechTarget. Helps us to see where the customer is in the customer journey, what is it that they're looking for. Helped us with mapping out the content that we had, what we were missing, what we were good at. So that was really great for us.
Great, thanks.
I think events and appointments play a big role. I think events probably moving towards less of sponsoring trade shows and more of kind of creating an experience for your buyer or customer to come and consume everything that's within your world. So I think that's something that's really important that will still play a massive part. So So I promote an event that we run called Hadoop Summit. So some of you may know or not. And it's kind of a community event where we showcase a lot of developments of the product. So I think that still plays a big role. However, we use data from our website. So our website is probably the biggest door to your organization. I mean, if you think about how many people walk through your offices every day, you compare that to how many people visit your website every day. So I think there's I think the data on what they're viewing is really important. In terms of intent data, purchasing intent data, you need to kind of classify the areas of your website which shows purchasing intent. So things like your product pages, things like speak to a consultant, those types of pages, or learn more about the local team, that type of stuff. I think if you can start understanding, if you can cookie them and then convert them into a known user, and then understand if they've visited those late stage sites, remarket to those guys via a nurturing program from a sales guy, then you'll be onto some sort of winning program. And I think the whole goal now would be to drive audiences to your website so they pollinate into the late stage areas of your website. So yeah, it does form a massive part of our digital. It does help us shape the digital plan. However, events, appointment setting, we have a team based in Cork that does all appointment settings but qualifies leads that have been driven from the website. So they still all matter.
Those are Hortonworks employees?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So we decided to have that in-house.
In-house.
Yeah.
And feel free to ask any questions. Just raise your hand and you can chime in. I have a few more here, but I'd like to get your thoughts. So when it comes to your marketing investments in EMEA, I think this is something we hear some challenges, from different organizations. Like, could you talk about how you're set up? Does each country have their budget? Is it planned at an EMEA level? How are you working with the U.S. and any challenges that come with this? I'm sure you probably all have a few.
So for us at Violin, I'm responsible for marketing for the whole of the EMEA region. So in terms of how do we put our plan together, again, it's very different to how it's been done. Other companies I worked with, clearly we have to look at budget and how we can spend that effectively. And again, going back to kind of what Bryony was saying and Bill was saying, it's quality versus quantity. And how and where we generate that and where our sweet spots are. The challenges are that we never have as much money as we'd like to have, and digitally is where it's at. There are so many slides and sources of, when you look at the buying journey, depending on which slide you're looking at, depending on which source you're looking at, anywhere between 53 and 75% of the buyer's journey is done before they engage with a vendor. If you're not part of that 53, 75% of the journey digitally, you sure as hell ain't going to be part of the 25% when they engage face-to-face with a vendor. And I'm not a media agency, I'm not TechTarget, I'm not standing there saying that. It's a simple fact of life.
Listen to her. A lot of knowledge.
So in terms of where's our marketing budgets going, clearly we have to be seen digitally, because if we're not going to be part of the end of the buying journey. And that's that's a fundamental education that we've had to give the sales guys, because as you've said, they love going to events. They can press the flesh, they see the whites of customers' eyes, they love it. Oh yeah, get me to an event. As I said, I love events, ran them for years, and they form part of the marketing mix. But digital now for us is absolutely fundamental.
So we have, again, I'll speak in the context of a business unit here. So some of the stuff is done globally. A lot more of the brand purchasing is done globally. At the EMEA level, we will look at it based on, actually what we tend to do is look at the investment model against the strategy, and then whatever we take out in terms of the EMEA costs, whatever's left over for the year, we'll work out what the quota system is in each of the regions and then push the money down that way. So it's that's the alignment that we do.
Okay.
Barracuda, we give all our money to TechTarget.
Even better answer. Balogun, get her some added value.
No, I'm putting that aside. We do have a limited budget, of course, and this year we have centralized a lot of our EMEA programs to achieve economies of scale. And then we have got a number of regional programs as well that are more localized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great, thank you.
I think it's important to have a rolling plan for each country. You have pressures from the sales teams that they don't have enough pipe and so on. So I think as a marketing team, you've got to be flexible enough to shift budget towards a country, move it away from a country and put it in another country towards ends of quarter and so on. So I think that has enabled us to be very agile and very flexible in meeting some very shortfalls in MQLs, SQLs, QSOs and so on. So I think that's how we tend to manage that budget internationally. I think from the US side it's slightly different. They usually, in the US they hold all the infrastructure, the brand and so on, and I would take those brand campaigns, the relevant brand campaigns, localize them and run them in EMEA. I wouldn't just take and run. Mm-hmm. I think we are slightly centralizing from the UK across EMEA and international. However, I think that will probably change as the business matures here. So I think we'll probably see that need for the agility in the APAC region, needing a local marketing team and so on. Mm-hmm. I think the challenge is the marketing operations side. So I'm a Marketo certified expert, so I do believe locally you need the marketing ops execution rather than relying on the US team to send out your emails and so on.
You can't run EMEA from Europe. Sorry, you can't run EMEA from the States.
Absolutely. Yeah. You need that support from an operations
But we still hear a lot of organizations run Marketo from the US for EMEA.
Yeah, so that was the way that we used to run. Yeah. And then I've been in the business for just over a year, and we've kind of generated that local expertise on the executional side, the marketing ops side, and it has dramatically increased the number of engagement that we've had within the local market. So I can show a dashboard which shows before marketing ops, this is the engagement. After marketing ops, this is the engagement. So it is the one thing that I would recommend. And it's tough because large organizations may find it difficult to have local demand centers or kind of marketing ops centers in Europe. But I do think it is key if you,
Definitely agree. Yeah. So we have time for one more question. So, what types of media activity have you seen the biggest growth in this year, and, and why has that been?
Funnily enough, this might take you by surprise, it's been digital.
Digital. Thank goodness.
Yeah, so...
all events.
So, yeah, when I joined Violin last October, and they hadn't had anybody really doing marketing for a while, so the sales guys had been running the marketing budget. So the sales guys have been running lots of events. And as I say, much as I love events, they're a tool in the box. We've had to downscale those to upweight the digital spend.
So I only joined about 8 months ago, so it's very difficult to say from what it was like historically within the Aruba, the classic Aruba Networks company before acquisition. I think that definitely we are pushing more into the digital space for all the reasons that we alluded to earlier, but also, and this is part of more of a strategic decision rather than anything else, we are actually investing a lot more in PR. So there are reasons why we go to market slightly different from the broader organisation, and because of that we are putting more into the PR effort and the content development effort that we do.
For Barracuda it's definitely content marketing, so we've increased our budget here, both for development of the content to fill in the gaps where we have in the customer journey cycle, plus localization.
Mm-hmm. That's key. I mean, Bill talked about it, John talked about it, creating local websites. I mean, if you're going to get deep in a market outside of the UK, you can't do it with English content. And you know, all the evidence is there. But we see, I mean, even the largest companies will come to us and want to run a campaign targeted Germany with one English white paper, and it's not possible. And it's shocking how these even large organizations invest so little in content. And the reason is because Global gives a budget to EMEA, and then if EMEA is like, we need more content, they're like, well, you got to use that out of your budget. And it's tough because it's a limited budget. You need to use that budget to generate immediate results. So it's a problem. But you know, investing in content, whether it's 1 or 2 assets a quarter, is going to be key long term.
Yeah, I think also as well is that, you know, the EMEA is considered to be one market often. And
everyone speaks English, right?
That's why you can't run it from the States.
And the reality is, you know, if you look at the demographics of organisational size, structure, vertical prowess in certain markets, you've got to adapt the model. And you can't do that sitting. I can't do it in the UK. It's down to the guys on the ground. I can give the guidance. I can, you know, provide that sort of thing. But ultimately, it's down to the guys in the field to work with their teams locally to really deliver that last mile of extra content.
If you're going to have cut-through resonance in France or Germany or Russia, wherever, it has to be in local language. And I know that comes with a whole host of difficulties. You know, if you're the likes of EMC, you can run 35 different websites in 35 languages and go and localize everything. If you're a much smaller company, the resources required are much larger. But if you're going to do a job, do it properly, you're not going to get cut through with somebody in Paris if you're trying to speak to them with an English white paper. It's just not going to work. So, you know, you absolutely do need to talk to them in their own language if you're going to have any success.
I think it's more around the localization of content, but the audience acquisition that goes alongside that. So I spend a lot with TechTarget and others as well around the syndicated content piece, only because I want to get that air cover, but I don't want to get in the way that I don't get the lead. So I want to build intelligent nurture flows and feed those flows with leads that come out from different countries. So I would translate a stack of white papers in French, German, Spanish, Japanese, and so on, go out to media companies, drive audiences, load it into the system, nurture them, and then try and understand the engagement from that perspective. So that's probably been the largest media spend. I mean, we've never really had marketing focused on the region before I joined. I mean, there wasn't really a marketing function. Now there is. We just need to really understand how the market reacts to your content and to your tactics. I think we're going to progress towards a very targeted ABM approach. However, it's difficult if you don't have the engagement with the individual. So we're going to look into things like lookalike models when it comes to display targeting. So I think Marketo's released their new ad platform, or it's going to come out soon, and they're able to kind of find similar individuals on the behaviors of people that are in your database and display advertising across the ad networks, across social and so on, to the organizations that you want to target. So I think that could be something that I think is going to be a growing spend in the next 18 months or so.
Well, a lot of good tips and insight. Please join me in thanking these guys for sharing with us today.